Power BI friends, welcome. We're diving into maps. We're gonna master them. We're gonna go through the options that you have. Currently, Power BI has 5 map types. There's the data map, there's a filled map, there's a shape map, there's an arc map, there's a Azure map. We're gonna go through each one so you know when to use it. We're gonna tell you how to use it, and then we're gonna talk about the roadmap of where these things are gonna go. So please take a minute, hit that subscribe button, like this video, leave a comment. Let's get into it. Let's jump into Power BI. All right, so here we are. What we're gonna do is we're first gonna talk about the data that we use. It's always critical to understand your data set. Then we're gonna go through the maps. We're going to, I'm gonna post this actually on the GitHub link so you can follow along and track with me as I go through this process. What you're gonna see in the bottom is there's gonna be a tab for every map type we're gonna discuss. I'm going to talk through each of these as well. And there's a data tab. Each of them also have a filter. Let me turn on the highlights here. Each of them also have a filter criteria at the top, so you can click and just see the map move a little bit more as well. Each one. But first, let's look at the data. So what this data is, this is a data set that is a list of billionaires across the world. And it's gonna have some geo information. So step one with the data set, anytime you're with a map, you need to properly set the metadata for your geo columns, no matter what map or what visual you're gonna work with. So let's take a minute to do that now. What you can do is in this data set, you'll see I brought in lots of attributes. There's the category, the person's name, their rank, calculations on the right, including the number of billionaires, their worth, but then these geo attributes. So here are the high-level settings you need to do anytime you encounter these measures, you want to use them. So it's very simple, but you're going to select them, and then under column tools, you're going to choose the data category for it. And if you don't do this, say if it's uncategorized, it's just not going to work. The geolocation data categories allow you to drop these fields then into locations. It will automatically add to the map. So every one of your geo attributes in your data sets you use, classify them. It's very simple. I click city, then I can pick city from the dropdown. I pick country, country from the dropdown. State, same thing. There is one other specific you want to do is for latitude and longitude, which are coordinates, if you're unaware, to get to a point in the world. You want to ensure that's set to a decimal, and you can do that during the transformation data stage. As you bring the data into it, ensure you don't round it, you keep it as a decimal. But then also when you're going to classify it, latitude, it's going to be a simple selection as well. It can tell latitude, longitude. So with that data set, there's going to be, after you classify it, just to highlight on this page, there's going to be a couple of just key columns every map's going to use. There's going to be categories. So we can slice and dice the data by category. Construction, diversified, that's going to be the blue. But then there might be bubble size, colors, gradient scales. That's going to go by net worth, or the billionaire's worth, and then the number of billionaires, which is just the count of each person. So you have the data set. Now, let's start first with the Power BI map roadmap. As you can see, if you load up the new December 2023 updates, they released a new update for the Azure Map, and it involves clustering, which we'll talk about. But importantly is that older visuals are going to be migrating away. They're going to be moving to this new Azure Map. So we're not going to spend as much time with those. I'm going to educate you on what those are. If you go to the maps, again, you'll see there's 5. Map, filled map, Azure Map, Arc, and then shape map. So what you should know is you'll see this pop up. Here it is. And it will show you that the maps and the filled map are going to eventually be converted to Azure Map. So this will be the main behemoth of a map that will be used going forward. So I encourage you to start with this map, but let's talk about them all because they're all a little bit different. So to kick this sucker off, we have our data. Let's go into the map. And the way that this tutorial is going to go down is I'm going to talk through the formatting of each of these so you can get the general differences of how they can be leveraged and used and how to configure and set them up. So first, with the standard map, it's a great way if you build in a hierarchy to kind of allow people to start clicking. So I'll talk about this more in detail on this visual, but it's important for any map. So as we're leveraging location, in the data model, I can drag over country, I can drag over state, drag over city, and populate the location, creating a hierarchy. What this is going to allow you to do with any of your maps is interact with it. You're going to start zoomed out and then zoom in. And the easiest way to enable this is after you add the locations, put on a measure. So in this case, the bubble size is worth. So the bigger the bubble, the more worth there is. And it's very simple. And we'll get into formatting and stuff like that. So that means this big green bubble, it has the most worth. And now we want to dive into it. So what we can do with the hierarchy is if I zoom out, well, it can look like a lot of stuff. But what's cool is if you click on the turn on drill down, and again, this is holistic for all maps, mostly all of them, then it allows the end user to interact with the bubbles. So right now I'm at the top layer, the country. Well, it looks like there's a lot of stuff happening in America. Let's dive into it. I click it. All right, I just went down a level. Now I'm into the state, as this is the second hierarchy, the state area. So if I hover over one of these, it will say state California, number of billionaires 178, 882, quazillion dollars, whatever. And if I click onto California, now it's drilling into each city. So this functionality is a critical way, it's a fundamental thing you want to set up for your maps. Add a hierarchy and educate the end users on how they can use the drill up and drill down to get to and navigate their data. So now that you understand the hierarchy concept for maps, let's go into the formatting section of this thing. So for the map version, it's going to have your key locations I just talked through, the legend, and what a legend will do for any map is if you go to your data, and right now it's not segmented, it's just a bubble per state or per location. Well, if I add a category like gender, now it just chopped up each bubble. And it's saying, okay, people can hover. And the key thing with these maps is the hovering functionality. People hover over them and interact with them. In this case, I'm hovering over this. It's segmented now to male being blue, female being red. If you add any legend, you can always go to the formatting section of any map, to your bubbles and category labels, and adjust it. So let's focus now on that basic setup. I'll remove the legend for now. Well, let's keep it so I can show you where to get to modify it. But within bubbles, bubbles is the main home base really for the first map. And you can see that currently it's set for colors of you pick the colors based upon the legend. But it's important that if you remove the legend, you now have a functionality of a gradient scale. You can see this function button, conditional formatting. If I click it, well, I've intentionally gone into and said the lowest value red, highest value green, middle value purple. That will be a routine process across all of these videos or maps. So my eye is drawn, my eye says green, big, red, small, and you can set that up in this section of the bubbles. All of the maps will also have category labels. I don't really like them too much. It kind of clutters it up. The map itself is intuitive where you can see where these things are, so I don't really even use them. But another cool thing with the map is it has the opportunity for heat map. So the same kind of gradient, the same options of the bubbles, if I choose to pick heat map, I pick the gradients and I can determine the radius. So I want it to be light, heavy, spread, not transparent, see-through, which is valuable. And what you'll see, and the reason why you know the Azure map is going to be the end one, is all the functionality of this one and of the next maps will be included in that Azure map. But that's the basis for the standard map. Now, to keep moving forward, you'd want to use this one when you want to enable people to visually see through the idea of bubbles and then interact and drill down into it. A filled map is going to be nearly the same thing, but you'll see there's no bubbles. And the big difference, again, all the visuals are set up the same way. Country, state, city. You can put a legend in, but billionaires and worse. So that's going to be a common practice with all of these. When you're in the filled map, well, all of these maps also have settings. So as we go through them, I'll kind of share different categories of each map, but they're usually generally applicable. So within the map settings, there's going to be options for, how you want this to look. In this case, I'm picking aerial. Let's make it bigger. Light, under the style section, grayscale, road. So you can decide how you want these things to pop out. Now, the first thing about why is this called a filled map? Well, if you look at the standard map, it's putting bubbles to talk about size. In this case, filled map, it's filling in the locational areas with a color. California, Texas, Florida. So this can be kind of visually telling a different story if you want to have that segmentation. And again, when you have the drill down and drill up features, you can go through different levels of this. So it's automatically determining at this point the countries. Enable drill down by turning on this button. And then let's click into North America. And now I'm seeing the various states. We'll do the same exercise clicking California. Now we drill into and you can see that it's highlighting San Francisco. Down here it looks like Los Angeles. So it's bringing color to those things. If we continue to look at the formatting section, all of the maps will also have legends. You can see it's grayscaled out. And that is because, if I go back up a level, back up to state, the legend is applicable if you have a legend. And there isn't one on there now, so let's add one. Let's do the same example of expanding this back out. I'm gonna pick gender and put it on the legend. And what did this just do? Well, it just segmented to say whichever one of them is at the top, we're gonna color the state that color. And that can be a little tricky, a little deceiving, but that's it. When there's a legend on the filled map, it takes the first value. So you can see the filled colors, male, female, you can change them under the fill colors section, which I'm doing right now. But it doesn't tell the best story that way, so I would advise not to use it. But instead, remove it and have a conditional formatting the same way we did the fill colors before, and that's the routine idea of the repetitiveness of these processes, where you can click in the conditional formatting, lowest scale, medium scale, green scale. And with all the maps, use your mouse, scroll in, scroll out to allow that functionality. But an important thing with all these maps is most certainly the way that you set up the, we don't want to get Missouri in there, but the way that you set up the filtering of, especially the tooltips, the idea of people hovering over things, drilling up, drilling down is clutch for all the map types that you set up. So in this case, let's go back up. We're back up to the state level, the country United States, fill colors. If I hover over something, I can see the billionaires, the percentage of worth, everything right there. So that's the filled map. The shape map is going to be pretty similar, but there's a few differences. I'm going to talk you through what those are. So with a shape map, well, you can see here's Alaska or Hawaii, right? Here's Hawaii and Alaska both. In the filled map, it's more realistic. You can move across the world. I'm going left to right. I'm going all over the place. I can go look around. The shape maps are engineered or designed for a specific one-page infographic. So what's cool about it is this one will be remaining. The map, the first two we talked about, filled map, those will be moving to Azure Map eventually, but the shape map will stay. And the key difference, and again, we don't need to go through every attribute for every map because they kind of continue through the process of each map. You'll see it's the same idea of titles, legends, fill colors. It's a very repetitive process, but there's slight differences. So the difference of the shape map is that you actually can pick the map shape. It's not as interactive. You can see there's no more drill down, drill up. It's you pick a shape and it's static. So again, this is great for infographics when you know you're gonna have one space, one area, and you wanna highlight the differences of those regions. So in this case, the map type I have United States picked. But again, if you just click through, you'll see the options. So if you have data for these areas, you can build maps that will align with those and fit with them. But in this case, we're gonna go back to focusing on the, let me move this here, the map settings for United States. Right there. So that's really the big thing for the shape map. Again, think about infographics. And what's cool about all these as well is I highly recommend sometimes even having a table that has values so you can see more detail as you click with it, or top ranking. But if you construct your filters, all these things interact with filters. So in this case, it's going to allow people, if they're analyzing, just real estate, okay, well now colors are changing, things are moving. Holistically, when you just look at it, California has the largest worth. But if we look at only real estate, well, it's over here now, and it looks like New York just took the top prize. The field map, the same way. You can see, and it's just critical to allow people to interact more with the map. Same with this map. Service, bubbles changing, and all these filters are actually linked too. So now let's keep moving on to the ArcMap. This is gonna give you another layer of functionality compared to the rest. This one, and also when you first launch it, it can allow you to sign in. So if you pay for extra features or you have the Arc account, you can enable even more configuration, more detailed adjustments to allow for the visual that you want to see. But to navigate this, and again, it was intentional for how we started this, talking about the basic formatting options, because it's similar to all of these, size, color, tooltips, location. But now let's add some more stuff to it. Let's make this a little bit more knowledgeable. So that's where the ArcMap does have some cool functionality. On the left-hand side of it, if you navigate, you'll see a couple of different things. So firstly, we'll start with the base map. And let me actually change this up, because I put on we'll do this under the gear section. You have infographics, reference layers, drive times, so you can see road information and similar. What these are layers that are static, that can go on top of an image. So I think in this one I actually have the state percentile of median income, and we'll look at it to confirm. But if you go into this section, you can click around, you can click one, you can see the diversity index maybe, and it's just things you can overlay, a reference layer, to add to the map. So if you have an applicable subject and your data is going to correlate to a base layer, then you can enable it and tell a more detailed story. In this case, if you go to any layer, like I'll turn it off for now, under this section, this is where you can control all the layers. So again, I just turned it off by the eyeball, toggle visibility. This was the static layer that I had. But now as we have that off, if you go to the base map, you'll see the same light gray, open streets, and as you zoom in, the detail changes for sure on all of these. But one thing that makes this map unique that the other maps don't have is the data label. So what's nice about that is, and it's tricky to get to, you can't quite find it initially, but if you go and you expose the layer under this layer, the city, which is where I added information over there, then on these three dots, if you click it, you can then drill into labeling, and now You can turn on the labels, turn them off, they're off, turn them on, it shows up. So for every dot, it shows the value. And make it a color that pops out, whatever works for you. But that's and even change the visible range so it can be more scalable if you want. But you get to the labeling, and that's something that makes that unique. As well as symbology. So in this case, I have color and size, but you can go through and change it to a heat map as well. Let's zoom back out. And same with just every location has a dot. You see everything and you can see the labeling to talk through that map. So that's gonna give you even more insight. And again, the filters can help to tell the story even more if you're just gonna drill into certain areas. So it's always wise to have those with any map. And that's going to be the overview. The same setups we talked about previously will apply to this one as well. There is a little bit more detail you can get into in the complexities of some of these reference layers, but that's going to be the high level for the Arc. And you want to use this one when you have a plethora of reference layers to pull from. They have a lot of great static ones. But now the one that they're getting to, that they're going to just start diving more into, is the Azure Map. And in the December 2023 release, they started clustering. And so that's what prompted this video even, because they're pouring more into it. So firstly, when you open up the Azure Map, it's going to be the image. If we look at the maps, you will have, again, the standard map, the filled map, the Azure Map right here in the middle, Arc Map, Shape Map. So with this, I do like to set up the same kind of options for the backgrounds. It's less about, I'm picking grayscale so we're going to see more of the color. But let's share some of the different things that this can do. As you can see, the map itself is already tilted and there's conditions you can set up. But first with clustering. So on the map, you see these black circles, 3, 2, 3, 7. What this is telling us is 7 data points are clustered together. This helps declutter the map by clustering or grouping together values. And so you can adjust that. If you go into the map, on the bubble layer, cluster bubbles off or on. And I'll talk through this because it is the newer release. So within cluster bubbles, you can change the size. You'll see the black get smaller, black get bigger. Let's make that larger even so you can see it. In this case, we'll make it big. Cluster color, size. Same kind of scaling, maximum. You can have them be tiny. I like them just big, so we're seeing what we're dealing with here. The shape, maybe you want to see them have a little bit more see-through, not as on there. You can adjust that with the transparency setting. Colors, border, zoom. You get to adjust all of those things and change them up. And to keep going through, you also can turn on multiple layers at the same time, which makes this kind of cool as well. So let me minimize the filters. I'll open up the data. So what you can see is I currently have the bubble layer turned on. Let's turn these things off so you can see how they can kind of work together. And you see the map just rotated, so we'll get into that too. So the bubble layer, it's on. I talked about clustering, which is great. If you zoom out, you'll see it's flat now, but if you click into it, you can declutter them by getting closer, zooming in. If I turn off the bubble layer, turn on a heat map, you have the same functionality as the previous visual where you can set the radius, choose the color gradients. I did the exact same thing in this one. And again, the value of this is pretty soon those other visuals won't be needed and will be all this. I think they are projecting in the year to do that. But now I'll spend a little bit more time hanging out in the 3D column layer. So let's turn on the bubble layer. And the 3D column is where you start to see things spin and some new adjustments. So let's turn this on and it's going to give another layer. So it's going to take the same values, but it's going to add a 3D column. And now we can configure and change a few things here. If you want it to be less noticeable, you can set the height, set the width of it. So in this case, tall and skinny, scale height, the shape. If you want it to be a box or a cylinder, we'll go width so you see they're more prominent. You can really see what they are there. Colors. again, the same conditional formatting. Have it be a gradient so it kind of follows along with your other bubbles. Maximum zoom and options. So it is valuable to know this. We haven't talked about this one yet. But for the options, when it comes to these labels, it does help to move them and to set them up differently. What I mean by that is I'm trying to get some space, so we'll scroll here. So right now, if I put above labels, that's referring to the names on the map. So the column is not being hidden by New York, but if I move it below the labels, it's transparent as well, but you'll start to see that now the 3D column, Ottawa goes over top of it. That's available for all the different setups that we have, the other parts of the map. So you can change that there. I like to have it below labels. Actually, I like to have it above labels because I like the labels below the visual, the color, so that's more prominent. And another cool feature of Azure Maps is you can get into the reference layers. And this is where you can load a GeoJSON file. If you want to Google and search those, essentially it's another overlay that you can put on top of a map where then your data will it's similar to the Arc, the way that was doing, but you have more customizability to change this and update it the way you want. What's cool as well is if you're doing anything with traffic, well, there's a traffic layer. So we can turn this on, and I do think it's important actually to come back down to here to the traffic layer. And as you zoom in, well, now we're seeing roads, and it's actually connecting, and you're seeing real time the traffic information. So if you are looking at something pertaining to traffic, well, you'll be able to show with that. So, that's going to be the high level overview of all these map options. And what do we know? So there's 5 options. Really, there's 3 that you're going to want to focus on. The first 2, map and field map, are eventually going to be migrated into Azure Map. If you want to have a steady state image, go to the shape map. And for your 2 most customizable maps at this point, it's going to be the Arc map and the Azure map as well. So with all that information, you should be equipped now to be able to select the map that you want to use and get in there and start doing it. So enjoy Power BI, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.